This is Glow in the Dark Radio. The science fiction podcast with original independent science fiction written and performed by Mike Luoma, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Vatican Assassin Trilogy and The Adventures of Alibi Jones by Mike Luoma are available in ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook wherever you find your books online. Get links and details at glowinthedarkradio.com. This is the Science Fiction Podcast, Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma, and I've got Chapter 19, Part 1 of Alibi Jones, the original novel Alibi Jones, as part of the Chronological Omnibus, as I'm presenting the entire Omnibus on the podcast, book by book, story by story. Well, in our story so far, Alibi Jones and Kit, the cat-like alien Dakhur, are on Duranimar, on the edge of Dakhur and Old Eldred space. They're trying to find out how and why the Eldred have seemed to return, and to try to gather and bring back evidence to prove that they have. They also found a large man they'd seen on an earlier planetoid with the Eldred, apparently brain dead, now up and giving orders to the Eldred. If Krish is right, that could be Ashimeth, who seems to be a time-traveling ancient enemy who inhabited Masakov's body and seemed to use a time machine to move his essence to the new, larger body. As Alibi and Kit tried to isolate and capture one of the Eldred as proof they were, indeed, back, they were discovered and outnumbered by an Eldred patrol and split up. Then an Eldred guard spotted Alibi and hit him with the end of an electrified truncheon, knocking Alibi out. So we'll be waking up with Alibi as we get into Chapter 19, Part 1, on this episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. Now, usually here, I'd share a little book news, but I don't have that much to tell you about at the moment. So I just want to extend a big thank you to my patrons. Thank you, if you are a patron, for supporting the podcast, because I could not do this without the help of patrons at this point in time. And if you want to become a patron, or if you want to find out more about it, I would love to have you on board. It helps to pay for websites and for the podcast itself, and, carriage of that, and all the stuff that goes into trying to put a podcast out. And patrons help do that over at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. In return, I try to do things for patrons, like early episodes. Got more of those on the way. This one is not early, but next week's will be, I do believe. I've recently given patrons a free digital copy of the Alibi Jones graphic novel, the collected Alibi Jones comic book stories, The Adventures of Alibi Jones Chronological Omnibus, collecting the comic book stories. So patrons get a free digital copy of that. So far, patrons are the only people who have heard my short story, Ajar. So when you're a patron, you get things now and then. If you want to learn more and or become a patron, again, just head to patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. And again, thank you to those of you who are patrons. We'll get into Part 1 of Chapter 19 next on Glow in the Dark Radio.
Hi, I'm JC. My co-host Cindy and I host the Fix It Home Improvement Podcast. We cover projects that every homeowner should know and top-rated products for home and garden. You can check it out on your favorite podcast app. It's called Fix It, Fixit, Home Improvement.
Now here's part 1 of chapter 19 of Alibi Jones on Glow in the Dark Radio. Groggy, his head aching, Alibi wakes up. He's lying on the floor of a small room, small enough to be a large closet if not for the one window. Light from outside illuminates the small space. He sits up and raises his hands to rub his temples. He massages his jaw. It feels like he's been clenching his teeth hard for days. His goggles are gone. Hell, at least I'm not tied up, Alibi thinks out loud. That did not seem necessary, a loud voice says with a laugh. Alibi looks over at the now open door. The large figure he assumes is now Ashimeth stands in the doorway. The servants are under instructions to stop you. You will not get far if you run, and this time they have orders to kill you, not merely bring you to me. Alibi stands up to face his captor. Ashimeth? He asks. The man begins laughing. He answers Alibi with a question as his laugh winds down. Do you have a lisp? No, Alibi answers. As who met, the man proclaims. He advances into the room. But that is interesting, the man says, glaring at Alibi. Do you think you have figured something out? Azamet cocks his head to one side, as if listening to something. What do you know? Alibi feels but cannot see an oversized, hot, greasy, dark hand grabbing him by the head, its slippery fingers closing around his skull. No, stop! Alibi protests weakly. His eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses in a faint. Strange, Azamet notes. He blocked me out. No human should be able to do that. Azamet turns and leaves the unconscious form of Alibi in a pile on the floor. He barks orders to the Eldred in an ancient alien tongue, a language not commonly spoken in over 1,000,000 years. He slams the door to Alibi's room behind him. Alibi can't hear the door. He's not really in the room. Not now. The walls of the room seem to have dissolved away, and he floats alone on a silent gray sea that disappears into a lighter gray mist. What the fuck did Azamet do to me? Where am I? Alibi. Alibi, Alibi. A voice calling his name echoes strange and loud inside of Alibi's head. Azamet? Not at all. Alibi feels waves of amusement wash over him, like thoughts of laughter. You and I, we have met, once, long ago. You wouldn't remember. Now Alibi can feel a sadness, like an almost palpable thing wash over him. Who are you? He thinks the question, but he thinks he already knows the answer. Are you my father? Are you Campion? Or are you Azamet, fucking with my head? Part of me was once BC. I am also you, and you are also me. Cryptic. It is hard to explain, but that which was once your father, I am. That is what draws me to you. That and the fact you have my talent, my curse. You want a curse? Fuck you, Dad. Alibi wonders if he can wake up. He tries to shake himself awake. Please, if a voice in your head can sound insistent, this voice does. Alibi stops trying to squirm and shake his way out of the mind space they're in. Is this a dream? No. It does have that quality, though, doesn't it? This is all in my head, isn't it? I'm really just talking to myself, right? You sound just like me. Fuck you again, then, BC. Maybe I should try to wake up. Alibi tries to pinch himself. Do not do that. The force of the thought stops him cold. You don't have to like me, but I have something I need to teach you before you face Azamet again. I am beginning to understand that this is why I am with you now. Teach me? What do you think you can teach me? I can teach you how to keep him out without passing out. Out? Out of your head. Then that was him, reaching in. He tried. You stopped him. I helped, but it overwhelmed you. Now we are here, and I see what I need to teach you. You sometimes hear the thoughts of others. I do?
Alibi realizes the voice is right. I guess I do sometimes. Are you really my father? In a way. I am many, and I am one. But most important, I am here to teach you how to keep Azamet out of your mind. Yeah, speaking of out of your mind. Please pay attention. Picture a set of heavy wooden double doors in your mind. Make them real. The doors are real inside your mind. Picture them open. Now, think of them closing. Double doors? In my mind? Why? Do it. Picture doors closing? Can you see them? Doors? Sure, why not? Try. This could mean your life. Seeing double doors. Now seeing the doors closing. Good. Open them again. Open? Closed? What do you want? This. A brilliant light blanks all of Alibi's senses. A flash of illumination overwhelms him, stuns him momentarily. He feels alone. He pictures the doors in his mind. They spring readily into his mind's eye. Big, heavy doors. Open? Now? Can I shut them? Close. Slam. The doors in his mind slam shut. That felt right. BC? Are you still there? I can do it. There's no answer. Alibi floats alone on the still calm gray sea. He feels, more than sees, the room begin to reappear around him as consciousness returns. His head feels oddly clear, and any trace of the earlier shock-induced headache is now gone. That was weird. Was it real? Was that my father? Or was it my head playing tricks on me? I still can't be entirely sure that it wasn't Azamet. The light streaming in from outside dims. Alibi sits up. The door to the small room is open, and Eldred stands guard in the doorway. It barks something alien at him, but he can't understand it. He doesn't have his wand, no way to translate. The furry blue koala trundles in, truncheon in hand. Looks like the same kind of shock stick they got me with outside. The Eldred stands over him, threatening with the pole and shouting something at Alibi he doesn't understand. Another Eldred approaches, appearing behind the first and chastising the other alien. The two hold a brief, barked conversation. The second one motions to Alibi to get up and follow them. Alibi gets to his feet and walks out the door of the small room behind the aliens. They journey down to a large room. Azamet's been busy reconstructing his laboratory. Several enormous, clear tanks line the wall on the right, filled with a yellowish gel. Empty gurneys stretch off to the left, surrounded by banks of life support equipment and other surgical machines. Alibi looks around, the new lab humming with activity. The room is filled with busy Eldred hooking up equipment, filling tanks and prepping stretchers. As they walk past the tanks, Alibi sees each has what looks like a wired-up baby floating in the gel inside. He doesn't have a chance to look for too long. His escorts shout back at him. Alibi doesn't have to know what they are saying to know they want him to keep up with them. They lead him through a door on the other side of the lab, down a short corridor, and into a room with a single chair. The Eldred snap at him again, making it clear he should sit in the chair. Alibi sits. The alien with the truncheon looks on, the electrified end of his pole weapon pointed at Alibi. The other Eldred begins rolling tape around him, securing him to the chair. Hey! The Eldred with the truncheon pokes it into Alibi, giving him a small jolt, enough to shock him silent. Alibi glares at the Eldred with the pole. The alien growls, and then pushes the truncheon into Alibi's side again with more vigor and a greater charge. Alibi feels every hair stand on end before he blacks out. He feels a change in the air around him as he groggily comes to. He sees Azamet standing before him as his eyes begin to focus. The servants are excitable, somewhat overzealous. I have perhaps engineered them a bit too hostile this time around, the big man muses aloud. No need to apologize, Alibi manages to joke. Apologize? Ha! Azamet laughs. I was merely thinking out loud, the large man explains. I don't owe you anything, never mind an apology. I should kill you or use you in my research. But you are, for the moment, more interesting to me conscious and alive. Lucky you. You owe me your life. You're one of them, aren't you? Alibi asks. One of them? Azamet asks, feigning ignorance. One of the ancient enemy. Ah, so you are aware of us. That is such a quaint name you've come up with, Azamet says, leering down at Alibi. That's what the Eldred called you. They told us about you. Said you were our ancestors, Alibi says. In a way, if only there were more similar... You seeded human life on Earth. They said you did, Alibi interrupts. We influenced life on your Earth, undoubtedly, Azumet explains. Pushed it in our direction. Didn't you create human DNA? You give us too much credit, Azumet says. He laughs. We used DNA to carry our messages. But whoever the great scientist was who created the original technology, well, that's a billion-year-old mystery, even to us. We assume your Earth was seeded with DNA some 3.5 billion years ago, when our world was seeded as well. We merely decoded some of the language of the great scientist, the prime communicator, placed there to read in our DNA, and then used his language ourselves. What, in our genes? Alibi asks, encouraging him. If I can keep him talking, I can probably keep breathing. In your genes? Ha, no. Azumet almost lectures Alibi. Your genes make up but a small percentage of your DNA information, a mere fraction of what is contained within the double helix. The rest, I have discovered, your scientists call junk DNA. Junk! The arrogance of such a label alone marks your race as our offspring. Look who's talking arrogance, Alibi cracks. It is not arrogance if you truly are superior, Azumet notes without intending irony. You are like underdeveloped children. You may be on the way to evolving into my race, but I assure you, you are nowhere near close to our development and perfection. To me, you sound as the screeching gorillas of your jungles sound to you. Nice, Alibi replies, resisting the urge to start grunting like an ape. There is a divine language imprinted in the DNA, Azumet says, as if proclaiming truth as both priest and scientist. A universal code, written in what your best minds call junk sequences. When you begin to read that code, Azumet says, almost wistfully, you begin to decipher the universe. If your race was so smart, how come you were wiped out? Alibi challenges. Azumet laughs. He looks at Alibi without saying a word. What? Alibi asks. Open your eyes. The evidence before you contradicts your assertion, Azumet points out. I stand alive here in front of you, a member of that race you claim was wiped out. If that were so, how could it be that I am here? I live, and so refute your argument. I see, Alibi says. Because you're here, I'm wrong? Alibi asks. You're not wiped out. A frightening thought occurs to him. Are you saying there are more of you? There will be, Azumet says threateningly. Will be? Alibi wonders. How? Azumet smiles a humorless smile. Ah. Azumet breaks off from what he was about to say. He turns back to Alibi. If I had not felt the touch from your mind, you would already be dead, he says quickly, his voice carrying a menacing edge. You display traits which show you may have developed further along in your evolution than others of your race. The information we sent here 1,000,000 years ago has not spun itself out entirely, though it seems so weak, so inferior. Azumet trails off in thought. Yet here you are. I plan to read your DNA to see if I can find more of what I need. Even this form I wear now, Azumet looks down at his strapping, muscular body, will soon begin to degrade. The form is not yet stable. You will help me with that. In fact, I have already taken a tissue sample from you. The decoding is underway. You will be such a help. How are you still here? Alibi asks Azumet, trying to draw back his attention. Plus, he's curious. Suspended animation, like Dolomé? Still here, Azumet says with some amusement. Not still here. Here again. Back, Azumet says with a flourish. From the past. You're kidding, Alibi says, although Azumet's claims seem to jibe with what Krish was theorizing. Kidding? Azumet asks. You're saying you came from the past? What? You're telling me you time travel? Are you trying to claim you came here using time travel? Give me a break. There's no such thing. I know my physics. Physics? Azumet snaps with a sneer on his face. Your physics are far too basic, far too limiting, far too proud of itself for what it has already defined, to the exclusion of the undefinable. Azumet laughs. When we learned the language of the great scientist, we discovered how to transcend the limits your physics transcribe. Ooh, big talk, Alibi cracks. Azumet actually pounds his chest. These physical bodies are nothing, Azumet insists. Focal points, focusing devices at best, containment units. You're a real romantic, aren't you? Alibi keeps chiding the big man. Time is only a constraint for these containment units, nothing more. The essence of what we are transcends these bodies, these boundaries, these borders, and indeed, that essence can't travel through time. You're blowing my mind, Alibi says sarcastically. Not that hard a task, Azumet replies. Wow, maybe he has a sense of humor. A sense of humor? Azumet asks, answering Alibi's unspoken thought. Your race is quite amusing, actually, Azumet notes, as well as annoying. You're saying your essence traveled through time? Yes, exactly that. If I could only... Have you ever tried to explain the concept of time to your cat? Azumet asks him. To my cat? I don't have a cat, Alibi says. You know what I mean, Azumet counters angrily. That is what it feels like to me, trying to put these concepts into words you can understand. I feel like I am trying to explain high concepts to a low-intelligence pet. Meow, Alibi cracks. You like cats? I have a friend you should meet, Alibi says, still sparring with him. Hope my cat-like friend Kit is okay. Would be nice if he'd show up soon. Your friend the cat? Azumet asks, again reading Alibi's thoughts. You can read my mind? Alibi blurts out. More like annoyingly over here, Azumet responds. You are broadcasting. Sorry. So, you know a Dakhur? Azumet asks warily. He scans their surroundings, suddenly watchful. And you actually believe you'll have a chance of being rescued. Ha, Alibi says, enjoying a chance to laugh. I don't believe anything, he tells Azumet. But rescue would be nice. Azumet calls out what must be a name. Kafa! But it sounds like a cough. An Eldred appears at the door. What of a cat man? Azumet asks the Eldred. Azumet is speaking the language of the ancient enemy, but thanks to the influence of Azumet's mind on his own, Alibi understands. There was a cat man, the Eldred says. He got away. Got away? Azumet asks menacingly. Afraid so, sir. His ship left a while ago, the Eldred informs him. He no longer poses a threat. No longer? Azumet shakes his head. Your assessment is flawed, Kafa. He swats the alien across its face. The Eldred recoils. Get me the Tekta, Azumet commands. Kafa runs out of the room. It returns in a moment with a communication disc in its hands. It holds the disc in front of Azumet, and the image of a Tekta appears above the disc. I require your assistance, Azumet tells the reptilian image. Our ships left there just yesterday. You require help once again? The alien replies with a question. This is a problem? Azumet asks in turn. Well, we do have a vast expanse to control. I thought I was dealing with a mature and powerful race, Azumet says with heavy disappointment in his voice. I require a squadron of your ships for my protection. A squadron? Well, Tekta Command will consider that request. Rest assured, Azumet, we will have ships to you soon. The Tekta tells him. How soon? Azumet presses. How many ships? Momentarily, the Tekta answers. Thank you, Azumet says through gritted teeth. The image of the Tekta disappears. Azumet grabs the disc from the Eldred. He throws it across the room, smashing it against the wall. Not soon enough. They do not know who they are dealing with. Used to getting your way, huh? Alibi chides the man. Azumet turns, looming over him. Entire systems once jumped at my command. I am used to being obeyed immediately. This lack of respect is disturbing. Alibi tactfully changes the subject, trying to get Azumet back on track. So, how many of you time travelers are there? A superior race does not allow itself to suffer extinction without a contingency plan. All of the elite escaped. They have already moved through time. They are moving through time, and yet they will be moving through time. Azumet shakes his head, realizes he isn't making complete sense. It is hard to explain. They will return when the time is right, when the way has been prepared. What, do you think to pump me for information? Azumet asks, becoming aware he's explaining himself to Alibi. As if I do not see through you. Yeah, I am transparent, Alibi admits. Let's see. Azumet stares at Alibi. Once again, Alibi feels greasy, dark fingers grabbing a hold of his head as Azumet begins to delve into his mind. Alibi remembers his dream. Double doors closing. Double doors closing. Slam! Alibi sees the doors close in his mind, and the greasy fingers melt away. "What?" Azamet blurts out, surprised and shocked. "You should not be able to keep me out like that." "I shouldn't, I really shouldn't," Alibi says, playing along. His arms are beginning to cramp up from being taped to the chair. He flexes his muscles, trying to keep blood flowing through his arms and legs. "You are a very curious and dangerous subject," Azamet tells Alibi. "I will have to examine your brain to see why you are different." "Thanks for the heads up," Alibi jokes. Azamet walks up next to Alibi and pushes an injector into his arm. "Hey," Alibi protests. "Sisa tre curium," Azamet tells him. "A good dose of muscle relaxant. If I can't get into your mind this way," he points to his forehead with 2 fingers, "I'll physically open up your brain instead. Cruder, yes, but it will still yield information." Azamet shouts something, and 4 Eldred appear. Since I shut him out, I can't understand what he's saying to the Eldred. Azamet stares at the 4 Eldred. A minute goes by. Alibi can't pick anything up, but can only assume Azamet's giving them non-verbal instructions. Azamet turns and walks out of the room. 2 of the Eldred begin cutting the tape off of Alibi. The other 2 leave the room. Alibi tries to struggle, but finds that the drug Azamet has injected him with seems to be taking effect. He can't move his arms. He can't move his legs. Paralyzed! He can still feel pain, however. As the Eldred rip at it, the tape catches Alibi's skin a few times. Alibi discovers he can't even scream. The other 2 aliens return with a stretcher as their compatriots finish ripping off the tape. "I can't move! Not even sure I'm breathing." The 4 Eldred roll Alibi over onto the stretcher, leaving him laying face up. They each lift a corner of it and carry him out of the room and on down the hall. He watches the ceiling pass by as he's carried. Before long, he's in the lab. Alibi's stretcher bumps to a stop. The Eldred lift the stretcher and roll Alibi off of it onto what Alibi figures is an operating table. He can see a stack of machinery off to his left. Azamet surges up, appearing on Alibi's right side. "Ventilator!" Azamet barks the command to an Eldred nurse next to him. The alien forces tubes down Alibi's throat. Air begins flowing into Alibi's lungs. "Get his head," Azamet orders another Eldred. A moment later, Alibi's scalp tingles as electric shears begin shaving the hair from his head. "Sensors," Azamet commands, and another Eldred opens Alibi's shirt and starts shaving small areas on his chest and applying small sensor pads. Azamet looks at the screens next to them. The muscle relaxant doesn't seem to be working as effectively as I'd hoped. Looks like your metabolism has sped up to chase it through faster than I expected. I'll just have to work a bit faster myself. Can't have you twitching as I finish up, huh? Can I?" An alarm begins sounding. "The cavalry arriving? Help on the way? And not a moment too soon?" "What is it?" Azamet asks from somewhere behind Alibi's head. "Tekta ships, sir," an Eldred tells him. 2 of them. "Damn, not my cavalry. And I can understand the Eldred again. Is he getting back into my head?" "They only sent me 2 ships," Azamet says, furious. "I ordered a squadron. Get me the Tekta commander." Another Eldred brings in a new communication disc and presents it before Azamet. A Tekta soon appears in the space over the disc, on the edge of Alibi's vision.
"This is the Tekta commander. We have assumed defensive positions in orbit. You believe you will be attacked?"
The Tekta asks Azamet. "There are only 2 of you? I ordered a squadron!" Azamet fumes.
"Your request was carefully considered by Central Command. It was determined that 2 ships were the maximum that could be spared for this possible situation, given current conditions across the Tekta expanses."
The Tekta explains to Azamet. "Current conditions?" Azamet asks.
"We have other concerns we must attend to,"
he is told.
"We are also attempting to assist you, Azamet, per our agreement."
"You 2 will have to do then," Azamet says. "Azamet out." Alibi can hear Azamet crashing around, but cannot see him. Two ships! They insult me!" Alibi hears him fuming. "Kafar, get our 2 Eldred ships into orbit with the Tekta. Get the servant crews on board now." Azamet appears over him. "Did you think I forgot about you? Ha!" He moves around above Alibi's head. Alibi feels something cold and wet slap against his head. What is he doing? "Guidelines." Azamet answers his mental question. Painting the proper line for the saw. Assuring an accurate cut. I caught that thought. You are still with me, are you not? Good. The Sisa Trachorium has paralyzed you, despite your system's attempt to burn through it quickly. It won't deaden your sensations. Ordinarily, they use an anesthetic along with it to dull pain. But that would interfere with the research results I require. I need you awake and alert for as long as possible. So long as you are alive. In the end, you will be dead, so what is a little pain along the way? I will be recording everything, even death and post-death brain activity. You know, it is curious to me that there is post-death brain activity in you humans. This may be the biological reason your race has its beliefs in afterlives.
Do you ever shut up?
Azumet grins down at Alibi, and then disappears from view. Alibi hears a high-pitched whine begin.
That was part 1 of Chapter 19 of Alibi Jones on Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Whee! Not a good sound. Actually, that probably is about as annoying a sound as I've created with my voice and my audio tools. Ever. That was pretty bad. Oh. Hope it didn't hurt your ears. So yeah, Alibi's in a little bit of trouble here. I don't know though, reading this now, Azumet is just a little bit heavy on the monologuing, you know? Laying it down like a Bond villain. Now I will confirm all of your suspicions while I prepare to kill you, Mr. Bond. Alibi Jones. Totally unintentional. I didn't mean to. At least consciously. But I was thinking, if Alibi's Bond, who's Kit? Felix Leiter? Does that make him Felix the Cat? No. I wouldn't do that. I did not do that deliberately by any means. I did not mean for that to happen, so no. I expect you to die, Alibi Jones. Sorry. Enough of that. It is a classic cliffhanger ending, so hope you're going to join me for Chapter 19, Part 2 of Alibi Jones, coming up on our next episode of Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Again, not a lot of book news, so just a thank you to patrons and an encouragement to become one. Think about it over at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. And that is all for this week. We will have the second part of Chapter 19 on our next episode. Now, I did cut it in half, but not half-half. Like the first part here was 25 minutes, 25 seconds. The second half is like 16 something. So it's a bit shorter second half, but it just kind of divided well right there in terms of the story. Cliffhanger ending. And that is all for this week. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma. Thank you again for listening to Glow in the Dark Radio. Glow in the Dark Radio. This podcast presentation is copyright 2025 by Michael F. Luoma and is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, CC by NC-ND 4.0. Music by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at Incompetech.com. Mike's books are available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook, wherever you find books online. Get links and more details at glowinthedarkradio.com and mikeluoma.com. This has been a presentation of Glow in the Dark Radio.